Hi guys, we are back in Hosea again, looking at chapter 3 today. So just to review for a moment, in Hosea chapter 2, we saw God grieving over the idolatry of his people, worshiping the Baal, false gods, yet giving hope that he would establish a new covenant, which would include people from all nations as interpreted for us by our New Testament writers. So that we talked about yesterday. And now in Hosea chapter 3, the Lord calls Hosea to redeem his own adulterous wife in order to personify God's relationship with his own people. So it says this, "And the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress, even as the Lord loves the children of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love cakes of raisins. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and a homer and a lethek of barley. And I said to her, you must dwell as mine for many days. You shall not play the whore or belong to another man. So will I also be to you." Hosea 3, 1 through 3. So Hosea buys his wife back, Gomer. He buys her back for the price, roughly the price of a slave. And he tells her that she must stay with him for many days and not go to her other lovers as she had been doing. So the Lord called him to do this and to say this. And he follows it with these words. The following two verses, which this is a short chapter, it's only 5 verses, but so Hosea buys Gomer back, but afterwards God says this is like his reasoning for having Hosea do this. It's quite peculiar, isn't it? So, but he says, "For the children of Israel shall dwell many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or pillar, without ephod or household gods. Afterward, the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and they shall come in fear to the Lord and to his goodness in the latter days." Hosea 3, 4, and 5. So these last two verses are pointing to the future reality of God's people in the new covenant. So God was going to remove the idols and the religious and the political institutions from Israel as punishment for their sin, right? So, and he did do that. But afterward, says the text, the true Israel will seek the Lord through the last Davidic king who is Jesus Christ. And they did at Pentecost. If you look at Acts chapter 2, you will see the account of that. And many of the Jews came to Christ at that time from many different places. So they were speaking all of those different languages, and all of the people were hearing it in their own language. And it was quite a thing there at Pentecost. But these verses are pointing to the messianic reign, beginning with Christ's advent and finalizing with the new heavens and the new earth. So the latter days, or the last days mentioned here, are also referenced at various places in the Bible, but in our New Testament, we see it in Acts chapter 2, verses 14 through 21, and Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. So consider these passages and know that these days have been upon us since the time of Christ's ascension. And so that's good news. So I'm just going to read through those two passages because I think they're rich and I think that they're good to dwell on. So we're just going to go through those two quickly. So the first one is Acts chapter 2, verses 14 through 21, and it says this: "But Peter, standing with the 11," now this was at Pentecost, you have to understand. Peter, standing with the 11, lifted up his voice and addressed them, "Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and give ear to my words, for these people are not drunk, as you suppose, since it is only the 3rd hour of the day." So the people were speaking in all the different languages, and some of the onlookers, and they were all confused. They're like, well, these people are drunk. What are they doing? They didn't understand. And so he's like, they're not drunk. Let me just tell you. And he says, but this is what was uttered through the prophet Joel. And in the last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams, even on my male servants and female servants. In those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in the heaven above and signs in the earth below, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the day of the Lord comes, that great and magnificent day. And it shall come to pass that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. So back then, Peter's saying, this is that. We're in the last days. People are going to prophesy. People are going to dream dreams. There's going to be signs, and you're going to know, like, Jesus is available to anyone who calls on him. And we're in that time now, and we have been since Pentecost. Okay? So that's what he's talking about. And then when you look at Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, it says this: long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. And it goes on about the supremacy of Christ. But this is that. This is what our New Testament writers are telling us was being referred to by these prophets in the Old Testament. So when Hosea speaks of the latter days, when God tells him this is going to happen, it's now happening. It's now that time. The new covenant has been instated. So good news, right? This is good news. And I hate to tell all the no kings protesters, but there is a king. Jesus Christ is the king, and he's the only king worthy of our worship. So we're in the latter or the last days, and we have been since Pentecost. God kept his promise, and he fulfilled the hope that he gave his disobedient people all the way back in the time of Hosea's prophecies. So just as Gomer, the unfaithful wife, was brought back or redeemed by her husband, her faithful husband Hosea, God the Father has brought back by the blood of his Son, Jesus Christ. He's brought us back. He's brought sinners who were dead in sin back. He's redeemed us. He's bought us. We were slaves, now set free by his redemptive purchase. And it's just like how Hosea bought his wife back at slave's price. So, and now people of all nations, not just the Jewish bloodline from Israel back in the day, no, people of all nations, including Jews, those who were not my people, as Hosea called his child, and those upon he had no mercy, Hosea's other child's name, the very names of Hosea's children, all of them, us, were included in that gift of salvation. So it's great news. I mean, it's exciting, and it's really cool to be able to read such an ancient text and see that it applies to us today. And our New Testament writers tell us that. And so what better source do we have than them? But it's the inspired word of God. So of course it's true. And of course the prophecies are fulfilled. So we are still awaiting the new heavens and the new earth, but we are in that latter day period. So I hope that's helpful. I hope it makes sense. And I hope everybody has a good day. See you next time.